Okay, I want you to just sit for a second with a deeply strange yet completely everyday paradox about human emotion. Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're not diving into some obscure quantum theory or a distant historical event. We're looking at something you have almost certainly experienced yourself, probably in the dark of a theater, popcorn in hand, that almost no one actually stops to question. We're exploring the science of fictional tears. Like, why do we cry at films? Because it's a genuine, profound mystery when you break down the bare biological mechanics of what is actually happening in your body and your mind in that exact moment. Just think about the absolute absurdity of the contrast here, right? On one side of your life, you've got real-world hardships. You can sit completely stone-faced through a genuinely brutal week of your own existence. You handle mounting bills, deeply stressful arguments, sudden bad news, and you just maintain absolute unwavering composure. But then, you flip to the exact opposite side. Fictional suffering. You sit down in a dark room, stare at a glowing rectangle, and absolutely burst into tears over a character who doesn't even exist, doing something that never actually happened, in a story someone literally invented for money. Let's just let that mystery breathe for a second. Why do we stone-face reality, but weep at fiction? It feels completely backward. And for a long time, people have treated this paradox like a behavioral glitch or an emotional flaw, like your wires are crossed, or you're somehow losing your grip on your emotional control. But we need to shatter that assumption right now, because this is not a malfunction in your emotional wiring. It's actually one of the most sophisticated things your biological hardware can do. And the reason it happens, it gets exponentially stranger the closer you look at the science.
Which brings us to Section 1, your brain's biological glitch and blurring the lines of reality.
Because my immediate question here is, does our brain actually know the movie is fake? I mean, logically, sure, we know it's a screen, but biologically, what is actually happening inside our skull when we see a fictional character in pain? That is exactly where the science starts to blur the lines. See, we possess a literal biological glitch, and it revolves around mirror neurons. These are brain cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you simply watch someone else perform that same action. Think about the visceral reality of that. If you stub your toe hard against a doorframe, a specific set of neurons fire in your brain to process that shock. But if you watch someone else stub their toe on a movie screen, a strikingly similar set of neurons fire in your brain, even though nothing touched your foot. Some deeper, primitive part of your brain doesn't cleanly file a movie as fictional data. It responds as if you are the one experiencing the physical or emotional blow.
Okay, I'm gonna need proof of this. Is this actually involuntary, or are we just letting ourselves get voluntarily swept up in the drama of a good scene?
Oh, it is entirely involuntary, and a chilling experiment published in the journal Psychological Science completely proves it. Researchers took these exact steps. Step 1. They showed participants a series of completely neutral, expressionless faces. Step 2. Right before each neutral face appeared, they flashed a subliminal happy or sad face on the screen. Now, this flash was so incredibly fast that participants swore they had only seen a neutral face. But Step 3. Highly sensitive sensors attached to the participants recorded tiny, involuntary facial muscle twitches. Their faces had already started physically mimicking the emotion of a face they never consciously registered seeing.
Wait, so their face was actually moving and they had absolutely no conscious idea?
Exactly.
Your brain is reacting to an emotional cue milliseconds before your conscious mind even realizes you're looking at a face. You're mirroring a stranger's pain before you even know the pain exists.
And the really shocking truth here is that filmmakers have known about this neurological loophole for over a century, way before MRI machines even existed. As far back as 1916, right in the middle of the silent film era, where intense facial expressions were the only way to convey the plot, one of the very first film critics noted that audiences simply couldn't help absorbing an actor's pain. Watching an actor suffering makes that pain, in a very literal biological sense, become the viewer's own. Filmmakers have been exploiting this specific glitch to bypass our logical defenses since the very dawn of cinema.
Moving on to Section 2, the chemical emotion amplifier and borrowing a character's story.
So, a subconscious facial twitch is one thing, but how does a tiny micro-expression transform into a theater full of people full-blown sobbing?
To get from a twitch to a tear, we really have to look at the chemical layer. When you watch an emotionally intense scene, your brain can trigger a massive 50% spike in oxytocin. Studies have actually recorded oxytocin increases of close to 50% just from watching emotionally powerful video content. And this is the exact same highly potent neurochemical your brain uses for deep emotional bonding with the real people you love in your actual waking life.
So oxytocin functions like a volume dial, amplifying emotional resonance that's already there. Hold on, that means the tears aren't actually about the fictional character at all, are they?
Exactly. Oxytocin doesn't just create emotional connection out of thin air. It takes a dormant feeling and cranks it up. If a character's on-screen grief brushes up against something you've actually lived through, say a personal loss, a deeply held fear, an unresolved memory, the hormone uses the movie to dial up the volume on your own lived experience. The silver screen is basically just a giant mirror reflecting your own unspoken baggage. You're essentially borrowing the character's story as a doorway right back into your own life.
Section 3. The emotional safety valve and the power of zero practical consequences.
Because I'm spotting a massive flaw in the logic here. If our brains simulate pain this brilliantly, and we have this chemical volume dial primed and ready to go, why aren't we collapsing in tears at every real-life crisis?
That is the ultimate evolutionary puzzle researchers had to answer. Why do you cry here, but not there? Why do you sob in a movie, but not when your real life is actively falling apart? Well, the answer comes down to survival and safety. In real, unresolved situations, like a sudden job loss or a medical emergency, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. You are in full-on survival mode. Crying in that moment feels intensely dangerous. It signals vulnerability when you need to be strong, and it threatens to open a floodgate of feelings you simply do not have the bandwidth to process while the crisis is still ongoing.
So it's about a contract, the unspoken contract between a story and its audience. A movie theater gives us the one thing real life almost never does: total emotional safety with zero practical consequences.
Precisely. We only agreed to believe the fictional story, just enough to physically feel it, precisely because underneath it all, our primal brain knows we're perfectly safe. We know we don't have to fix the exploding spaceship, we don't have to financially support the grieving widow, and we don't even have to keep functioning afterward. That unspoken contract of safety is what actually gives your nervous system permission to let the floodgates open.
And there is a vital mechanical reveal happening here too. Crying actively engages the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's internal machinery for calming down after extreme tension. Emotional tears aren't just sadness leaking out of your eyes. They act as a highly controlled release valve deliberately triggered by the story. Think about how directors engineer this. They use soaring musical scores, dramatic lighting, and this slow, agonizing build of tension toward a resolution. The tension is built specifically so that parasympathetic release can happen. It is the core biological mechanism that all good storytelling depends on. And that release takes immense physical time. Studies tracking viewers actually found that after watching genuinely sad film clips, it took participants a full 90 minutes for their nervous systems to completely rebound. That means a quote-unquote good cry isn't just instant, fleeting relief. It's a slow, profound, physical nervous system reset that is still playing out in your body long after you've left the theater and the credits have rolled. Which leads us to Section 4, the advanced brain reframe, and why this is a feature, not a bug. So, what is the final verdict for those of us who feel a flash of embarrassment when we catch ourselves welling up at a fictional movie? It means you shouldn't be embarrassed for a single second. Psychology research makes this incredibly clear, and it completely reframes the entire experience. Crying at films is directly linked to higher measured empathy and higher emotional intelligence. It is definitely not a sign of lower resilience. The people whose eyes well up at a fictional goodbye aren't weak, and they certainly aren't losing their grip. They possess a brain so extraordinarily advanced that it can seamlessly simulate another consciousness, convincingly enough to produce a real, physical, hormonal response to a person who was never even real. That is absolutely not a broken brain. That is an absolute masterpiece of biological software. So I want to leave you with this provocative final thought. Next time you're in a dark theater, and the line between a fictional story and your own genuine feelings completely disappears, will you realize your brain is working perfectly? Never again view that lump in your throat as a sign of your emotional guard slipping. It's actually your biology quietly doing exactly what it evolved to do. Understanding another mind so completely that for a few profound seconds, the line simply vanishes. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. See you next time.